And welcome back. Yet more stories from the alumni and from deans at the top schools. As I was saying to my panelists, the secret of CentreCourt is that these careers panels are wildly popular. And I think the sort of insights that we've been able to share, this is the unsung heroes of the school, that when I talk to the alumni, they always talk about the sort of transformational experience, and it very often comes down to the sort of work that they were able to do with the Career Services team. So I'm delighted to welcome another great bunch today. From NYU Stern, we have Beth Briggs, who's the Associate Dean of Career Services. Beth, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Have you read all of those books behind you?
No, so the little secret to my life is that I live in an apartment building in Brooklyn, and my neighbors are away, and I've been working out of their apartment. So this is like
Nice.
my office, home away from home these days.
That was very community-minded of them to step away right now.
Yeah, it's very helpful.
We're also welcoming John Rooney, who's Director for Careers at Notre Dame and the Mendoza School. John, we're going to keep that view from your office window a secret, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Also with us, and of course couldn't resist a beautiful backdrop on her Zoom image. I assume that's a glorious West Coast photograph. Jessica Chang is Director of Career Advancement at Pepperdine. Great to have you with us, Jessica.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much. And yes, we're missing our view from our Malibu campus that we have.
And Regina Ragazzi, who is the Assistant Dean of the Parker Career Management Center at UCLA, Anderson. And those are your books, aren't they, Regina?
Yes, those are my books. I have not read them all. I'm working on it.
But yeah, now we'll all be approaching our neighbors in the days to come after Beth's advice.
Exactly.
So, of course, we're only, 5 months through the year. It's I think we're already exhausted, aren't we? It's nobody saw this one coming. And I think what we really wanted to start, just to get a sense of the class of 2020, who of course started a couple of years ago, and the job market that they are graduating into. And then we'll be looking at what that job market will be 2-3 years from now. So Beth, from a New York perspective, of course, Stern students then end up placing in positions all over the world. But what are you seeing? Resilience, agility, opportunities in certain sectors and less in others?
So all those things, I would say. And we're very happy with our class of 2020. I mean, I think no one expected to end their second year of their MBA program in the fashion that they've had to, and just the way that they've come together as a community to support one another and to be in touch with our alumni has been pretty remarkable. I think the whole Stern community has gone above and beyond. And we're continuing to see that happening with employment. So normally I think we are seeing that there are some challenges, but our students are really staying in it and working closely with our careers team to be finding the roles that exist. So we're working with our alumni, not just to source jobs, but also to identify sectors and companies where we know hiring is happening. So it doesn't feel like they're just trying through LinkedIn and networking just to network, that we're making it a little bit more intentional and directional. And luckily that seems to be yielding opportunities for folks. I feel like a lot of good lessons were learned. I started in the careers office in the spring of 2010. So just when that group from the 08-09 crisis was graduating. And what I'm hearing from a lot of our employers, and I'm sure my colleagues are hearing this as well, is that there was a lot of lessons learned during the financial crisis where companies made moves that they realize now were not the best moves. So cutting off hiring, not building up the talent pipeline. And we're hearing consistently across sectors, across companies, that that's a lesson that's been learned quite well, and they're not shutting down hiring. I think we're still seeing hiring happen. There's definitely a watch and wait and see in certain sectors. But for those who've already made offers and people who know where they're going, those offers have remained largely consistent, which is also really great to see. But overall, I think resiliency is, something that we believe we instill at Stern, or we bring people who have a high EQ and IQ, and that it's really shining through at this moment.
Right. Well, John, your perspective, and perhaps picking up on Beth's point of not wanting to shut off that talent pipeline, because the challenges that companies face, there's the pandemic, but then there's the rebuilding, the restructuring, and the transformation perhaps of their business, and they'll need graduates from Mendoza and other top schools, won't they?
Yeah, I think Beth has a really good point, and we've heard that as well. And I was here at Notre Dame in '08, and in some ways '08 was tougher. If you look at our outcome numbers that were at graduation, we were in a better shape this year at graduation than we were in '08 by quite a bit. Now, I do think the 3 to 4 to 5 months after graduation will probably be a little bit tougher now than they were in '08. But one of the big lessons that the firms learned in '08 is you can't shut off that pipeline and get it going back very quickly. So they're less reticent, they're a little bit more cautious to shut things down. So we've seen interviewing, continue, and we're working hard with our students every day to just stay active, stay positive, stay connected. And so I think people are really working through it, and it's just, it's one of the best parts of my day when I see, universities like the ones that are represented here and our student bodies just pushing through this, because and we're having success, and we'll get there.
Right. So it's not necessarily that offers are being rescinded. Maybe sometimes when those positions will start, it might be a month, it might be 6 months, but the offers are holding pretty steady.
We've seen very few full-time offers be pulled and very few internship offers be pulled. So that's been great.
Good, great. Well, of course, a West Coast perspective from the two other schools, and maybe Jessica, we'll start with you. For the class of 2020, and perhaps even some of the sectors where, in fact, these current conditions are requiring more hiring. Aviation, perhaps not right now, but in tech and other sectors. What are you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the population that I work with are part-time students. So these are students who are working full-time and then they go to class part-time. And when COVID-19 first happened, we saw a lot of our current students getting laid off. And so we had to help them pivot into something new quite quickly, and having to redirect them to maybe an industry that was hiring, because what they were in before may have hiring freezes, so we couldn't direct them back to their career that they were already in. So having to help them think about what are industries that they could transfer their skills into, and to also think strategically, what are the industries that are still hiring, like tech, healthcare, online education is booming, Zoom. I don't think I've ever been on Zoom so much as in the past 3 months, right? I feel like Zoom and I are BFFs. Like, I know so much about Zoom. But so to have them start thinking about what's something that they can do now just to get them back on stable footing and financial security, and short-term goals versus long-term goals. And then once things normalize, if that even happens, but things get back to some stability, they can then start thinking about, okay, what is it they really want to do? So it's helping to support them, but also let them know the reality of the situation. And so unfortunately, the group that I work with, I think we're hit more than, let's say, a full-time student who maybe was not working and was still able to continue their internship or their program. A lot of my students rely on their job to pay for their program. So it's a different reality for them, and a different issues that we see from that population specifically.
It's interesting, of course, Stern Anderson also with part-time or weekend programs. So for the part-time program, often there's the idea that what you're learning in the classroom you will bring back to your professional position and apply that. But in this case, it's actually support with you to give them structure for then how to have a pivot their job search. And how do those part-time students talk about that? Do they really appreciate being able to sort of think strategically about their approach to the job market right now?
Yeah, I think they sometimes they can get very pigeonholed. They think they can only do one thing, and that's all they can do, right? So they look for jobs that they feel that they can match, but instead we try to help them think of what's a job that you can see that you can match yourself to, because you've done so many different things. You're not just one thing, and so they only see themselves as one function. Or one skill set that they've done for the last 10 years or so, but they forget that they worked on projects while they were in the program, or they 5 years ago worked in a completely different industry or function. And so helping them reshape who they think they are and be able to say, how can I translate my skill sets into a new function or a new industry? And I think they've been really receptive. I think the initial shock of being let go, or the initial, anxiety of what's been happening after that, I think they like having the support that we're still here for them. We do a webinar every week with them on some topic. So we constantly are engaging them and letting them know that we're still here for them. And I think that's the most important piece, to know that they still have support, they still have resources available to them as needed, and being able to just brainstorm with someone to help them focus and strategize on their next move.
Well, I'd love later on in the panel to come back to this idea of how you as careers teams hold up that mirror and help people to think either beyond their limitations or new opportunities. And but Regina, just in terms of the perspective from Anderson, again, you're placing graduates not just locally on the West Coast, but across the country and internationally. What are you seeing at the moment?
So the first thing that I think was a surprise to a lot of people was just how good the investment banking and consulting industries responded this time. And I think investment banking particularly learned so much from the financial crisis, and they turned around on a dime here, and they were responsive quickly. And I think some of them were working behind the scenes to figure out what the other banks were doing, but every single investment banker kept their internship. Some of them were shortened. Some of them were pushed out a little bit, but every single bank said, we want to make this the best possible experience. And some of them even went to a full-time offer, and they said, we're going to have a little bit of a shortened internship, but we're going to offer you a full-time opportunity. Not all of them did that, but some. So I think that was really good, made us feel hopeful. Consulting was the same way. Some of them went straight to full-time offer, and they're doing more of an experience for the summer internship. Might be a couple of weeks. They might be encouraging the students to be going into to do maybe a social impact internship that can offset the time that they're going to be just putting in the shortened time. So that was terrific for us to see that, because it meant a lot of the foundation was still really solid, and that made the students, the school feel very good. I think there were some industries where it came to a screeching halt, and you can see this in the LA area in entertainment. So that's an industry where we weren't actually at the point. Now we're on a quarter system, so things are a little bit later anyway, but that tends to be a little bit of a later hiring industry for both internships and for full-time, and things basically came to a screeching halt. And that was tough. So we saw a fair number of rescinds. A lot of them were in that area, and they were across industries for sure, but they were in the entertainment, and then the hiring actually stopped. Now, we have seen a tremendous support on the tech side too, and we put a full third of our student body into technology. So that's great for us, and it's everything from the big names, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons, and all of those were very good very early. I mean, Google went early. They were one of the first to say, we're going virtual, and we want to make sure that we're supporting you to have a great place to work virtually. So we're going to help you out here so that you've got the resources you need to do that well, right? So now what we're seeing a little bit more of is the crossroads between tech and entertainment. So where those two come together is where there is a little bit of an opportunity, and students who are interested in traditional entertainment are saying, okay, this is a nice pivot point for me to do a little bit of both, since the technology seems to be a little bit more supportive right now and more open to hiring still. So that's kind of what we're seeing. Globally, people still have their internships open, more China than anything else, which is where we had people going. So it seems to be those are just fine. They're ready to take people. Most things are virtual anyway, so it doesn't even matter. So we seem to feel pretty good all across the board here.
Got it. Great. No, it's great to be able to look at those different sectors. And of course, we need the entertainment sector to bounce back because we've almost run out of things to watch on Netflix with
Right.
with working from home.
Right.
Michael Jordan's documentary is almost done in our household. So now, Beth, you talked about and with John, just being able to look over a longer time frame, and of course, you're working with current students and their first positions coming out of school, but just this essential idea that not only are you better with an MBA from one of your top schools than without it, but just that enduring value of the degree over the 10-year time frame. So someone that did an internship at Lehman Brothers in 2008 obviously wasn't able to conclude that when they graduated from school, but they built some great careers in the last 10 years. And that's an important reminder, right, of the enduring value.
Absolutely. I think what we did, one of the first things we did was put together a panel with some of our graduates from the class of 2010. So these were those first MBAs that I knew. I'm sure many of my colleagues did the same thing. But what happened through that panel was an amazing reminder of the way your career is going to unfold when the things you don't know about. So where can you be intentional and where can you be open to possibility? And what we've seen through history is that people take roles that are, to what Jessica was talking about and John and Reggie, it's a stepping stone. So even if you thought for sure, I want to be in entertainment and media, to building on Reggie's point, you may not go straight there, but you're going to build your strategy skills by taking a role at graduation, leveraging your amazing academic background, and then be able to pivot down the road. So you see the through lines when you can look backwards, and the part that came up for everyone from that class of 2010 panel was the value of the MBA. Really, the bedrock of their careers was that starting foundation. So getting all those incredible business skills, as well as even some of the soft skills, which our alums talk a lot about, the need for your management communication skills. So beyond just the hard and fast finance or strategy skill sets. But I think what happens in a year like the year we're in, when I compare it to those graduates in 09 or 10, is that there's more possibilities. People are considering taking roles that they would not otherwise have thought about. And in doing that, making that step, it kind of a whole nother kind of career opportunity unfolds for you that you might not otherwise have considered. We're seeing that with our first year students this summer. Many of them, when we went into quarantine, we were kind of like tracking along like we normally do. And to Reggie's point, like they were going to banking and consulting and tech. And we know a lot of hiring also happens between mid-March and early June. And all of a sudden, it really felt like, oh, that whole landscape's going to look really different now. So we've built out a program to give our first year students opportunities this summer, partnering with a variety of organizations, both in New York and beyond. So another interesting part of this world is that geography boundaries have kind of gone away, which has been really fascinating. But the summer is meant to open people up to possibility. A lot of what Jessica was sharing with her part-time students, how do you step back and say, I wanted this, but how do I refine that? How do I build it to make it be a broader plan than the narrow thing I might have been focused on, knowing that experience is going to be just one piece of the big puzzle of your career, and that the things you do during the challenging times may actually be the gateway to that bigger role that you get to.
Right. John, that idea of making bigger plans or looking at industries, perhaps, when people first came into school. In fact, I was going to talk to each of you about the role that you even play with your colleagues in the admissions office. Do you discuss applicant profiles when they're applying to Mendoza, the career goals that they've shared about why the MBA, and based on their profiles, your take on the sort of opportunities that they might then be able to enjoy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always a good relationship at top schools between career development and admissions, and looking at where your strengths are from a alumni base, a corporate base, and a curriculum base, program base. Each program has a different kind of approach to business, and attracting students that fit with that best is really important. And then certainly career development's a big part of that. In addition to that, we are talking a lot now about flexibility, flexibility both in the short term, but flexibility in the long term. And I think that's just a discussion that you continue to have with your students. And it's been going pretty well with our students. And we haven't, as of working with the interns up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were saying, you still have to go with plan A because there's opportunities out there. Just now, we're starting to get into plan B, plan C with some students to try to, close out the internships to make sure everybody has a good experience for this summer. And then we'll restart in the fall, which isn't going to be too long from now. And we're going to start out with, what's option A for you, what is option B for you, and what is option C for you. And in all these things, we really love to leverage our alumni, and we have alumni come in and talk about different perspectives. And this is one of the things that I'm sure my colleagues struggle with all the time is like, you'll have alumni come in and say you have to have a completely laid out career development plan, and you have some others equally successful people say you don't have to have a plan at all. And I think it's just working individually with each student and their environment they're in to try to pick it and really develop great plans, but then be flexible.
And presumably those same alumni are also, have you seen alumni that were in the financial crisis of 10, 11 years ago, sort of proactively reaching out to the school and say, hey, I remember this, how can I help?
Yeah, we also had a panel for our students, a Zoom panel with 4 or 5 students from the graduating class. I think it was my 2009, 2008, or maybe it had been 2010, but the ones that were in the heat of that. And, it was a great hour conversation because the end of the message was everything works out. But when you're in the heat of the battle and you're in the heat of the crisis right now, there's a lot of things that you need to be thinking of. Even simple things like you can't spend 9 to 10 hours on your job search working your way through this. You'll just burn yourself out. You have to be flexible. You have to set a good job search plan and leverage the right tools, not get frustrated, be flexible, but also be positive. So it's a tough message that has some duality to it, but it's one that has worked for our graduates in the past, and there's definitely sharing it with the students today.
Right. Jessica, for the part-time students, of course, they perhaps imagined how they would be juggling their academic engagement and their professional commitments, and in certain cases, they no longer have the position. I'm sure there are many others that are still then working. They need that same flexibility and agility to be able to adapt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, right now there's less movement with those who are still working, just because it's, you don't want to make any big moves right now when everything is so fluid. But with all of our classes moving online and they are mostly working from home, they have a flexibility of I think focusing on themselves when they didn't have time to do that before. Working full time, having a family, and going to classes 4 nights out of the week, you basically have no social life. And I know that alum come back and tell us all the time that I have so much time now. I don't know what to do with myself. I didn't realize I would have so much time. And so I think knowing that, and then now with things looking so different, I think it's been an adjustment. Definitely the work from home, if you haven't had that before, was definitely an adjustment. The having classes, 8 hours a day online, has been an adjustment, but, our students bounce back beautifully, and our faculty, for those who had to learn Zoom for the first time, that was a transition. But, it was smooth. We are so thankful that, our community is, so resilient, and with everyone's support and helping each other, it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. And with summer continuing in online, and fall, still not exactly sure yet. But, I think whatever happens, we definitely are able to make it okay.
Right. Reggie, you talk about Google as one of the early movers, and of course California as a state was also one of the first ones to move to a lockdown situation. Do you think that this graduating class in the last 3-4 months, they can then demonstrate to employers the sort of adaptability, how both their learning experience, they had to adapt and continue to thrive in that environment? Is that something that they can then leverage?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the messages that those of us who have been through a bunch of world crises in the past are able to nod to and say, you know what, we're going to get through this. And I know you're going to say that this is different from other times, and it is different. but we're still going to get through this. And one of our great and very popular accounting professors and real estate professor, does both. He said the same thing, and I nodded to him when I was watching this webinar. I was like, yes, Eric, we agree. And that's one of the first messages I said to them. We are going to get through this, and you're going to learn a lot from this. And I think for so many of us who worked through the financial crisis, I had to start up a financial services executive recruiting business that I tried to launch. And it was right when the financial crisis happened. It was like the worst type of business I could have chosen. And it nearly killed me, but here I am, right? And part of that resilience is what allows me to try to advise people really well right now and say, you are going to get through this. But I will say this, we do, and I think everybody would agree with me, and Beth and I spoke about this a little bit yesterday, we've got to spend a lot of time pumping up the students, and we do spend a lot of time doing that. Because there are ups and downs, and there are weeks of silence from companies. People could be hot on an interview trail with one company, and all of a sudden they go radio silent. And it's like, okay, let's work through it. Let's throw 5 more balls up in the air so we've got other stuff brewing. And no sooner will you get a few interviews there, you're going to hear from this other company. And so I think students learn how important it is to keep options open. And just to keep driving towards opportunity. And I think that's one of the most important lessons to learn. It's like, let's just keep throwing them up in the air. We can have our bad days, and I think we're all having them. We're all having them right now, but let's come out of it the next day. Let's allow ourselves that. Come out of it the next day. Be ready to move on. Be ready to throw more balls up in the air and get after all of them with equal exuberance or more.
Right. Now, looking further ahead, because of course these conditions today, but as we look to both those graduating next year, certainly anyone that's considering or starting your programs this September, they'll be coming out in the summer of 2022. For that class, Belle, they'll have everything to rebuild. Opportunities. Every challenge presents its opportunity. So, as your crystal ball, what does it tell you for sort of the next 2-3 years?
Well, first I want to say I think I wish she was my coach because I love that pump up speech so much. And when you asked earlier about the value of an MBA, one of the things that's happening now, and I know it will happen in the future, is this learning in real time, right? So our faculty have taken to running weekly, if not more than once a week, seminars on the impact of COVID in their particular professional areas. And that's been an incredible gift. I keep reminding our students to take advantage of all of those because you're learning insights to bring to your workplace that the people who are working don't have the time. We were all saying how much we're working right now. So as a learner, as a student, you're able to take this information and bring it and add value, even just in an interview or a networking conversation. For people who would be incoming in the fall of 2021, I feel like there's never going to be a better time. I mean, it feels like to me, being able to have the time to reflect, to learn, to apply all that you're learning in business school to what the new world is going to look like is sort of this phenomenal experience. In terms of what industries will hire, we know who's going to be strong. We know who's continuing to hire through this challenge. So I can only imagine they'll emerge even stronger, if not broken into more than one company down the road. But I think that the learning part is going to be so important, and just the opportunity to be with experts in their field and having worked for the next year, like that's going to be incredible. And what you're going to be able to bring with your own work experience, then combined with your MBA, your graduation, I think the opportunities are going to be very expansive. I think MBAs are going to be in very high demand from what I've heard from employers.
So, and your colleagues in the admissions office, I mean, it's been a tough first 5 months of the year, but they're bracing themselves for next year. Business school, as you said, it's going to be a great place to be in the next year or two, and the opportunities that were presented. And equally, John, whether that's, for the sort of Fortune 500 companies, P&G and others that many Mendoza graduates secure positions at, but even a company like that, they're looking at how do they, what does online retail look like? So many questions. What do you see for the next 2-3 years?
Well, if you look at getting a degree from a top MBA program like we're talking about today, I mean, go back and look at any data point, and it's a pretty clear return on investment. If you look at the return on investment at Notre Dame, and you can go look that up, I mean, I hope you do, because it's a pretty easy return on investment. So just that alone, there's always been a good market for top business people coming out of these programs that have great leadership skills, great analytical skills, great business skills, and they come into these 2-year, 1-year environments, part-time environments, and they're strengthened by the curriculum, they're strengthened by the faculty, they're strengthened by their fellow classmates, and they come out just amazing business leaders, and they get jobs, and that's the track record, and I don't see that changing at all. One thing we love about Notre Dame, not only do you get the return on investment, not only do you get the soft skills and the hard skills, but you're a part of a community for the rest of your life. It's amazing how engaged Notre Dame MBAs are. It's almost like they are engaged to their undergrads. They come back for football games every single year. They're very involved in the clubs in their cities. Notre Dame has the largest alumni club it has a great alumni club, let me just say that. And all our alums are engaged, whether it's New York and San Francisco, Atlanta, Boston. And so this is something that you have for the rest of your life, and you can't put a price on being a part of that community, picking up a phone during times like this and being able to call a classmate of yours from the class of 2010 or 2015. So I encourage all the prospective students on the call today to really take a hard look at the data and the experience of MBAs, because it's a pretty easy decision after that.
All right. Well, you certainly make it sound very easy for them now. Of course, they've got to get over the hurdle of being admitted to your very selective programs, but we'll let the gatekeepers deal with that one. This is a presidential year, Jessica, and it'll be noisy and it'll be potentially nasty. As we then look beyond, there has been this sort of shadow of uncertainty around H-1B visas and for international applicants looking at business school studies. Are you reasonably confident with schools that have pursued STEM designation, or the situation that, again, international students could be fairly confident about opportunities in the 2-3 years ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what this has shown, the situation we've been in the past 3 months has shown, is that remote work is not going to be going away. It's actually going to increase. I think you can see that it works. You don't have to be on site, and that with everyone working from home, and I think it's just going to head in that direction. So I think location is going to slowly start going away. Now, of course, being on location for some positions are crucial, but I think a lot of companies are going to have to rethink the workforce and not limiting their talent to only domestic or candidates within their community, because there's so much talent out there, and being able to open the pool to international, to people who can bring something different. And that's what we tell our international students is, what is it that you bring to the table that is different from everyone else? And for companies to invest in an international student is a commitment for them as well. And so we understand that. And so we want, I think what this situation has shown is that there is opportunity worldwide, and to be able to compete with everyone. Higher education is almost I think before we, like in history, high school diploma was an absolute, then you have to get your bachelor's degree. I think nowadays a graduate degree is the most basic that you need to have just to be competitive in the market right now. And it is an investment, let's be honest, it's expensive. It's not cheap to go to grad school and get your MBA, but it's investment in yourself. And what we've seen is that with the MBA degree or any MS degree, there are promotions. You climb the ladder quicker than someone who doesn't. And like you mentioned before, Matt, they can take what they learned in class the night before and apply it at their workplace the next day. And to have that real-time learning and that ability to bring something extra to the table at your workplace so quickly is something that not everyone's going to have. So I think with that, the market's going to change in terms of remote work and thinking outside the box of who you want to look at, but it's also the investment in yourself of elevating your background and leveraging not only your work experience, but now that you're at this great degree that you're going to be getting to become a holistic, marketable candidate, where the competition is just going to get harder as we open the doors to every candidate across the world.
Right. Reggie, Los Angeles obviously is a great international hub. As you look at that sort of international student experience, and even perhaps over the last few years, how more international students have then looked, to return domestically. There are, tremendous growth opportunities in Asia, Latin America, and elsewhere. So the skill sets that you're then providing them with, they will take with them anywhere that they go for the rest of your life. Do you think we'll see a different dynamic for international students? Do they like to stay for the first couple of years, but then explore opportunities back in their home country?
We have definitely seen that over time. Now, for us, what's great is we just got the STEM designation. So that does help us to do exactly that. So you get your first 3 years here, and then you can take those skills back to your home country. I think one of the issues some students have had, to be perfectly honest, is that sometimes there's a pay discrepancy coming out of an MBA program back in the home country. So I think that's something to think about, because they've put all the time, the effort, and the money in to come into a US MBA program. And then if they go back and the pay is not matching the experience or matching what their peers are making here in the US, that's tough, especially if they have these full sets of loans to pay off. So I think having the opportunity to work for these large companies here where they get that classic MBA pay and they can make a nice dent into the loans that they have to pay off, I think that's super helpful. Plus, you start to see some promotion opportunities and progress here in these roles in the US, and then they can go take big leaps when they go back to their home countries, either working in the same companies that they're working for here, or going into more local companies and then hopping in these much larger roles, management, leadership. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity for people globally.
Yeah. So I see your career services, you and your colleagues, as the secret sauce. We sometimes talk about this well-known marketing professor you might have, or real estate and accounting, as Reggie gave the example earlier. But when I talk to alumni, they talk about the career service. They talk about this transformational journey at business school. And so often they say, it was the work that we did with your teams to hold up that mirror and really explore. So I'd love to help our viewers understand how it works. What is this best kept secret within the MBA programs, you and your colleagues? Beth, perhaps starting with you. On the soft skills, they're taking courses to discounted cash flow and strategy and global supply chain and the rest of it. But you're very much focused on some of those soft skills and how those will translate to their career development. So how do you ensure that they develop those sort of skills?
Thank you for asking. I love the recognition of us having a secret sauce to help people. But I think
it's public.
At the core of all this, people that work in career services really have a desire to work with other humans, and we're very curious, and we want to be supportive, and we want to, I love watching people grow and develop. And the role I'm in, and I'm sure this is true for all of my colleagues, you get to see people grow and develop within the 2-year program or 1-year program, whatever they might be in, and then you have a relationship for life. So the folks who've just graduated, even, I'm like, well, you're stuck with us for life, which is kind of fun, but also it's a joke, but it's very true, because I want to know I'm invested. And I think that maybe is where the feeling of the connection with the Career Center comes in. We have a team, all of my colleagues have teams that are very invested in your success. And that success is based on your own definition. So we start working with students before they matriculate, before they join the program. And the first thing is an assessment tool to really kind of step back. We joke sometimes with our admissions colleagues, like, we know they said one thing in the essay, but what do you really want to do now that you're here? What is it that you really want to do? Because we know things change from time to time, but understanding who you are as an individual is really our starting point. And what is it that you're looking to gain over the next 2 years, and then working together to come up with a strategy or a plan. I think the students that get the biggest return out of the Career Center relationship are those that maintain the relationship, that come in every couple of weeks. Here's what I'm doing. What do you think? there isn't really a lot of secret sauce in the work we do, except for having space to kind of hold students accountable to their own goals. Like, that is what I see our job as. And we have a lot of tools and training and tips to help you to get there. But at the core, it's that close relationship that we're able to build.
Now, John, between that, this is what you maybe said in your application, what you really want to do. You're no doubt also observing certain experience they already have, analytical skills, certain skill sets that you think are either underdeployed, haven't been explored, and this is an opportunity for them, to think about areas that they hadn't considered. That's quite a fine balance of, what they want to do, but also perhaps potential that you see in them. How do you then broach that conversation of, hey, have you ever thought about, a career in this sort of area, and talk that one through with them?
Sorry about that.
It was your best answer.
Call when that happens, right? What I was saying is I liked I think Beth touched on two important things that are kind of related to your question. Number one, the secret sauce for good career development teams is it starts with you love to see people grow and develop. And when we look to bring people on our team, we look for people that are, we have three core values. Are they student focused? Are they comfortable being held accountable? And are they efficient? Because there's a lot of stuff that you can do in academia and in career development. So we really talk about those three things. And the first one is the most important thing. Do you have people on your team that are helping these students that really care about them and are really passionate about coaching and development? And I think that it all starts with that. But then there's this accountability that has to happen not only with the career coaches and the teams, but with the student. And if you're able to share kind of mutual accountability around, defined behaviors or metrics or anything like that, I think you have a lot of success. But then you can get, then you do get into discussions about who this person is. And it's all about asking good questions and having good coaches that draw them out. And we're not going to tell you what to do, and we're not going to tell you what it is. We're not mentors, we're coaches. And so we work with you to have you bring out those things. And we have devices that help you identify skills and the moments where you've been at your best and the moments you've been at your worst. And we have classes and we have leadership development, and we have one-on-one coaching. The thing I'm kind of most excited about at Notre Dame is we're trying to draw a really tight linkage between how our leadership development curriculum, which is very important to Notre Dame, and we have an approach to leadership that is unique, that draws in spirituality, and we feel that that sense of spirituality is really important when you're thinking about why the heck are you walking this earth, what your vocation is, and how do you best want to help people and use business as a tool. And so that's a foundational leadership discussion that leads into career development, and the more understanding that we can have between leadership coaches, faculty that are teaching org and leadership, fellow students, and all get on the same page of what it means to be a Notre Dame leader, I think that leads to a willingness to really dive deep into who you are as a person and identify what is special about you. And then where in the world can that be most applied to where you can make the biggest impact and make the world a better place?
Mm. That sense of purpose, Jessica, do you see that as a real driver for individuals? Of course, that there's job titles and perhaps other success, but that how important is that sense of purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo, Beth and John's sentiment of that. Our team, the secret sauce is that we want to see you succeed, and we're here to support you. And I think a lot of the times, as we grow up, we are told by our parents what we should be or what we should do, right? And then we go into our undergrad and we're supposed to know what major to choose when we don't even know who we are yet. And I think what we help with is, asking the question is, what is it that you want to do? Or what is it that you're passionate about when they maybe have never asked themselves that question before? We have students who have been in something for 10 years and hate it, but they just happen to fall into it because got their bachelor's degree, met a family friend who had a job, and then they work there, and then 10 years later they realize this is not for me. And so we see that a lot with people coming back to getting their continuing their education, getting that higher degree, because they want to make a change. They want to pivot into something that that they want to do. And so we're here to help support them. We're not here to say, well, I think you should consider this, or I think you should look into that. It's more of, what is it that you want to do, and helping them find that sense of purpose. And maybe they don't know, and that's okay. We're here to help them figure that out. We help them really think through what brings them joy, and what is it, the aspects of their previous experience that they really enjoyed, and think we can find something that will fit their ethics, their values, the industry that matches their ethics and the values, and it's a culture match for them as well. We often don't talk about the culture of the company, and instead they look at too much at the salary, the big name companies, and all of that, but it might not be a culture that is going to be a fit for you. And so helping them learn what culture will help them be most successful is something that we help them to, and something that we know that they sometimes don't think about as well. And that's a big piece of success, and a big piece of being happy at where you work.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're addressing these issues. If people have sort of run through undergrad, the early stages of their career, kept their head down, but this rare privilege of business school, graduate studies, to step back and really think about, where your passions are and how that and translates. I mean, Reggie, do you see that? Is there sometimes this sort of aha moment that, as you're working with students and you're holding up that mirror to them and they're like, I'd never thought about it that way, or you're just opening up new vistas that had been, they've been blind to until now. Do you see them having that aha moment?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question just generally, because I think one of the most important things we've noticed over the past few years is the importance of that exploratory phase of the career search process. And so many students say, my goodness, I started business school, and what I didn't realize is that I had to come in knowing exactly what I wanted to do. And I don't even know enough about these industries and functions, and here I'm having to choose, and I have to get ready to start prepping. I mean, I've heard of consulting, I've heard of investment banking, I know technology is out there, but I have no idea what these component parts are. And that's something that we at Anderson have been doing over these past couple of years, is moving forward a lot of that information. And I think this is actually going to be something magical about having a year that's going to start virtually for a lot of schools. And we don't know, that still remains to be seen, right? But what virtual allows people to do in their own living rooms is take the time, like we've been talking about, people have a little bit more time now. They can take the time to step back and say, let me explore these things. And we have a lot of panels on industry and function, and then we create a library. So by doing this virtually, we can beam in alums from all over the world to talk about their experiences in a given role, in a given industry, and their career paths to get there. And then we can house it in the library so that a student can go watch one, they know exactly what they want to do, or they can watch every single one of them if they're still needing to explore. And that aha moment may come when they see someone and they say, okay, like 8/10 of what they're saying I can relate to. Part of it, I could hit the ground running if I were doing this, and part of it is an area in which I want to grow. There's that. Or do I seem like this person? Is it somebody I can relate to? That I see myself working with this person? So that's what I love about this opportunity to explore. Now, the aha moment may happen as they're gathering this information. It may happen for them. They may go hard after a certain industry or function, and it just doesn't happen. And so then it becomes, how do I now pivot into something else and maybe explore that in my second year? What can I do now to help me move in that direction? Because we all know you don't just get from A to Z necessarily. It's A to B to C, and it's all the way down the path. It may take years to get exactly where you want to go. So I think aha moments can happen, but I think it also, the person, the student has to have an open mind to explore different things, try out different paths, talk to different people, and be open to opportunities they may never have heard of. And I know that happened to me personally when I was going through UCLA Anderson as a student. I ended up in a job I could never have told you that this job existed. And furthermore, when I was sitting in a seat as a first year, I was looking up at the woman on stage and we all admired and loved her. And now I'm in her position. I never in a gazillion years would have thought that would have happened. So I think the more open you are in life, the more opportunities are going to present themselves, and you'll be shocked and really delighted when you have those aha moments.
Right. So we've talked about resilience, we've talked about agility, keeping that open mind. Beth, just in terms of where applicants to your schools can look, because of course you think about Stern, you think about New York, obviously there's finance, but New York is more entrepreneurial than San Francisco to many. All your schools are so much more than any one sector or category. So how can individuals either use employment reports? Is LinkedIn a good tool just to get a sense of the sort of career paths that people, they might be working in tech, but some might be in product management, others might be in finance within tech. What's your advice to really help people to dig a little bit deeper to get a sense of the career paths of Stern graduates?
Thanks for asking that. I think I want to build off of what Reggie was talking about, because so much of it, whenever I talk to prospective MBA students, if they choose Stern or anywhere else, using the time you have now to do exploration is so critical, because there isn't a ton of time once you start school. Things happen really quickly. So I think while you're looking at all of the employment reports that our schools have, that's a really good way to begin to figure out, well, where will I fit? What looks right for me? Or even see like, oh, there's a percentage of students that went into this category. What is that? Let me take a look. And then backing into using LinkedIn as a treasure trove. So look for companies, look for titles that might be aspirational for you. Look at what that person's background has been. It's like a breadcrumb trail that then you're able to follow to build your own career. Our employment reports are on our website, on the Stern admissions website. We have a really detailed PDF that we have, which we have it year over year. It gets very granular in terms of industry, functions, salaries and industries and functions, geographies, top companies, what else? It's kind of more than you would ever need. It is an aggregate, so it might be hard to find the individuals, but I think using that employment report to then unlock who is in the LinkedIn world, who went to NYU Stern, who might be working in this industry, has this kind of functional role, might be someone you want to talk to. But we have decided about probably 4 years ago that we were really going to push out more data than was mandated by our governing board for data reporting, because we wanted to be as transparent as possible. I think for us, like the big win is that while we're known as a finance school, consulting is actually our top industry, which is sort of a shift that's been happening throughout the years. If you look at our geography, there's a lot of people in New York, but we're growing on the West Coast, which to my West Coast friends is always a goal for us.
That gives you a good excuse to go and see your alum and then see Jessica and Reggie, right?
Absolutely, yes. I'm devastated it's not happening this summer, but soon enough.
Right. And John, again, individuals that might start with that first position coming out of business school, but then 3, 4, 5 years, there's often that sort of period. It served them well and consolidated everything that they've learned in the Mendoza program. And then they make, perhaps a move to a position that might build the next 10 years of their career. So, I mean, is LinkedIn a good tool to be able to follow that narrative and an individual's career path?
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Learning LinkedIn is obviously a great tool. And so you can reach out to Notre Dame alums. We tend to be super responsive. And so you can try that approach. You can also work with the admissions folks and say, hey, I'm really looking at, looking to talk to some alumni that are 5 or 6 years out, and then we can help you make those connections as well. But I think it's interesting to do a lot of research before you come to campus. Reggie was talking about educating students on the market. We used to first have students talk, really explore who they were, and then look at the market, and then how do you communicate that value and execute a job search. Those are kind of the 3 traditional pillars of know the self, know the market, and then communicate value. We actually flipped those a couple years ago, and we start with a deep dives with alumni and marketplace overviews to really root the students into what is this MBA marketplace. Look at the data, 30% go into consulting, 25% go into finance, and then there's some all other buckets as well, marketing and HR, but it's pretty interesting. Like consulting companies really value MBAs, and they hire a lot of them and they pay them a lot of money. So do investment banking. So do nonprofits. Notre Dame has a reputation for nonprofit. They don't pay as much. And, companies, there's some companies out there that don't hire any MBAs that a lot of students think they do, like Costco, for instance. We get a lot of questions about them. They don't really hire MBAs, and all that data is out there. So we try to have these discussions with students, and I encourage them to look at the data that are on the websites, look at the employment reports, go to the admissions office, talk to some folks and try to get connections to alumni, but also understand that the marketplace has some clear definitions of what companies are looking for MBAs and what they'll pay them. And being really knowledgeable about that will help you not only understand whether you want to get an MBA, but which MBA to get.
Yeah. Jessica, you talked about the big investment that this represents, time, money. Favorite stories that you have of individuals that you've seen come into the program and where it's taken them and how good that is.
Sure, absolutely. I think my favorite stories are students who really find themselves during the program, and they might have taken left and right turns throughout. They take a really great marketing class and they want to go into marketing. And then literally next term, they take a great finance class and then want to go into finance. So it's really about these individual experiences where they just change their mind just based on one really wonderful class that they took. And so, I think students were able to also then create the teamwork that they have, and they create relationships. And it's so wonderful to see that they continue to be friends 5-10 years down the road. They really create these wonderful relationships. And I love seeing them when we have our LinkedIn community, say, oh my God, Jim, I haven't seen you or talked to you in 5 years. And remember that class that we took? And being able to see that and to know that, the program really helped provide that avenue for them to create these wonderful relationships, but then also be able to, hear them say, I took what I learned in class, or a workshop that we did on executive presence, for instance, or salary negotiations, and having them be able to say, I used what I was taught during that workshop, and I was able to get that promotion. I was able to negotiate that salary that I was looking for. So offering tangible results for them is something that I love to see as well. And being able to know that, I have a social work background, but I knew I did not want to go into clinical work because you basically are planting a seed that you'll never see, right? But I think with career coaching, what I love is that you're able to provide feedback, you're able to provide just coaching and be able to see some tangible results, to see them be able to use it and come back and tell you, I did it and this is what happened. And that's really what I love. And I love the community that we have and just the learning environment. And I think people who really get the most out of the program are those who really truly dive deep into it. They take advantage of all of the offerings that the school provides, not just through coursework, but the teamwork, the extra projects that they have to do, but also the offerings that we offer. And so many of the events that the school does in general are great opportunities to hear from executives, to hear from CEOs. And it's you investing in your professional development that is additional to just the program. So I think that is what I love to see, is when people really take advantage of that. And those are the ones who I see are the most successful in terms of their career and their success in terms of career, but also their own professional development, whether it be whatever they want to do. Sometimes they quit their jobs and start their own company, and that's fine too. Or they decide, I'm going to go completely different and work at a nonprofit and, Tasmania and work with, impoverished communities. And so we see that too. And that's whatever they decide to go is fine. We just love seeing them be successful and happy in their careers.
Right. Reggie, you mentioned a woman on the stage that you admired, and of course, several years later, you're in that position. If you were talking to your niece, your nephew, and about why they would make this investment in themselves, what would your 30 seconds in that elevator, why should we be making this investment in ourselves?
So one thing I say to people all the time is you'll never have to apologize for having an MBA, but you might have to apologize for not having one. So if you're up against somebody who, for a job, and you're both going to get paid the same amount and get the same title, but you've got that MBA, and with it, that whole base of knowledge, whether it comes from a core curriculum or an expertise in building in a niche area, all of that, but also this network you now have. You've got your own class, you've got the people the year ahead of you, the people the year behind you, and then the greater alumni community. All of this you bring to the table. How could you not want this? How can you possibly say that this isn't worthwhile?
Well, that's a note that is fantastic. It's you guys that keep your colleagues in admissions so busy. Just not just the insights, but clearly that level of support. Why this job means so much to you. It's an absolute pleasure for me to listen, to share this panel with you. So all four of you, thank you very much. I know that we have provided that you'll have some individual questions that Leanne and my colleagues will steer you towards. But Beth, John, Jessica, Reggie, thank you so much for all of the insights and joining us for CentreCourt.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being
Take
on the
care.
panel together.